With that, we can get underway. In terms of minutes, Gordon, I know that you had distributed minutes from December 30th. They were pretty complete, pretty robust. I don't know if you had any additional comments that are worth noting.
Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Good. I think that they're ready to go. Everybody's seen the latest and greatest.
Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion. Brian?
I'll move that we approve the minutes of December 30th, 2020.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Second. Okay. All right. All in favor. I guess we have to do a roll call. Pam? You're on mute, but I think you said aye. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Gordon?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
All right, and it's Wendy, it's approved. Okay.
And Wendy, just to let you know, I have the minutes for the next 2 meetings, January and February, and I hope to get March. And so you'll all be seeing those this month. And hopefully next month we'll start to get caught up.
That's excellent. Good to know. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate the update.
Well, thank Karen. She's done a ton of work to make it happen.
And
Thank you,
it's
Karen.
a lot of work. So kudos to Karen and thanks for keeping us on track.
Yeah.
So our next meeting, just a touch base, May 12th is our next meeting and followed by June 9th. Does anybody have any concerns for those meetings? Everyone can attend as far as you know?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. All right, well, we'll move on to Dave, Director's update.
Okay. So in the 49 days since we've launched the Clean Concord Comfort website, we've gotten 50 requests for coaching services from customers exploring heat pump adoption. This level of interest, if it continues, will greatly exceed the commitment that we made in our deed grant application to carry out 150 coaching engagements over 18 months. So that's off to a great start.
Yep.
Energy New England is organizing a virtual Drive Electric Earth Day event for 10 area towns, including Concord. The event will cover EV basics and how EVs help the earth in your pocketbook. It takes place from 6 to 7 p.m. on April 22nd. There's a registration link on our homepage, on CMLP's homepage. Center Village Condos participated in CMLP's EV Ready program pilot program. Their board has voted to install dedicated charging infrastructure for 12 homeowners in the association.
Great.
Yeah, the infrastructure will be based on developed by an engineering firm hired by CMLP, and will contribute $25,000 towards that. CMLP's engineering firm recently completed some additional EV charging infrastructure design at Riverwalk condos, another EV pilot program. So they're planning to make the decision soon on whether to install the infrastructure or not, but making some progress there. And then the third EV Ready pilot participant, Milldam Square condos, has decided not to move forward because there's not enough interest from them, the charging infrastructure at this time. So 2 of the 3 pilot participants are moving forward.
Great.
CMLP has decided to pause the development of further EV charging programs for multi-dwelling units in 2021. We're going to take that time to evaluate the uptake in the multi-dwelling units. And we can do some cost evaluation and see what we want to do moving forward. So far, I'm pleased with 2 of the 3 moving forward, and then we'll be able to gather some data. On the AMI side of things, we've completed several information gathering questionnaires from the consultant, which will be discussed at upcoming bi-weekly meetings with them. They're really in an information gathering phase. So that's started. Pretty big lift on us, but they're trying to learn about us and learn about what we do and what our plans are for the future. Last week we had a meeting with them, and they presented the state of AMI the market, to give us some background on where things are today. That was a informative meeting. So we'll keep moving forward with that. On the broadband side of things, if you recall in the budget, we had budgeted for a bucket truck, and that has come in. We put it into service last week, and unfortunately that is back to the dealer because we've run into a couple problems, so they have to make some repairs. So it should be back to us within a couple of weeks. But we're all excited to put it in service, and now it's back out of service. So back quickly because we're, on the verge of relaunching installation. So on the personnel side of things, Victor Sension is now on board in the role of network engineer. So that recruitment's complete. We will launch a second recruitment for an additional network engineer. You might recall back before the pandemic, we were in the process of bringing a second network engineer on, and then that got paused. So we're gonna start that again. We've launched a recruitment for a line worker position. We've had one line worker move on, and we have another one that's gonna retire. So we're gonna advertise for all three grades, grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3, and see what we get for applicants. So it's, pretty important for us to get those filled. We've also had a customer service rep resign, and so we've launched that recruitment. And I haven't checked this morning, but as of yesterday afternoon, we had 132 applicants already.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a lot. It's a big lift for us to review all of them. We're doing that as they come in as best we can. And it was that position, that spot was set to close, I believe, on April 20th, but we're going to close this Friday because, we already have enough applicants that it's, we don't need to get up in the 250 range. So,
Great.
yeah, so good interest, which is great, but it's a lot of work. So Carol and I have a running joke that we don't even want to go into the system and see how many new ones are in there. In any event, we have a lot of personnel recruitments going on. So yeah, that's my update. Any questions?
I hope you have easy recruitment on the line workers too, because that's been a challenge in the past, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's always a challenge. It's a limited pool out there, and that's really why we decided to launch for all three positions. We could get apprentices, which is the grade 3 position, and that's fine. We'll train them and bring them through the system. Grade 1s are really hard to find. That's not common to bring in a grade 1 line worker, but we've done it in the past a couple times. So we figured, why not give it a shot and see what's out there. You might recall we did that not too long ago. We had a candidate, but that candidate actually took a position at Eversource. So we'll see. We're not the only ones out there recruiting for line workers. Littleton's recruiting for a grade 1 line worker as well, which is right next door. So, it's difficult, but hopefully we can find a candidate or two and fill those positions.
Great. Pam, I know you had a question. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. One is a very minor point. Both are actually, but the first is if we could, as a matter of practice, always give the full names of things we're using acronyms for when we talk. So in this case, Dave, you're very clear when you talk, but you said AMI, and could you say what that stands for?
Yep, that's advanced meter infrastructure.
Okay, and I'm saying this for two reasons. One is that I sometimes don't know because I'm new, and the second is because the public also may not know. So anything that goes out that we start, and I'm a do that myself all the time in my area of expertise. So that's point number one. Second, just on the application process, you said 420 was the original application deadline. I'm just curious, is there any possible process problem with pulling it, shortening it in terms of public notice to applicants? I mean, I imagine this is very clear that everybody knows. I mean, if I read it and I saw 420, I might say I'll send it in, is there a process? Is everything very clear to the applicant pool that we are shortening the process?
Yeah, we go through HR with all of that, so we follow their lead on the details, and they do a really good job making sure we're following the guidelines. We requested that it be shortened because of the interest level and the, being able to manage, going through those. And so we followed their lead on how to do that, and everything is everything is done on the up and up. So
yeah, that's great. I just want to just clarify that, and thank you. I would expect that would be the answer. But
Brian?
So Dave, the Mill Dam condominium complex isn't moving forward. The reason was they didn't have enough interest compared to the scale of their project. And when you say you're pausing, other condominium complexes that are looking to do a project like this, what does that mean to them when you say you're pausing? Is it just pausing the rebate, or is it pausing the assistance?
yeah, we're going to pause the program, take a look at the ones that we have out there, and see what the interest level is. Meaning, if we put, we invest, $25,000 into a project, and we only get 4 cars, then the money that we devoted to that would be better spent in other ways with EVs. And so we want to make sure that we're going about it the right way and spending the money appropriately. So really, we have 3 different locations, that multi-dwelling units that have charging, and we're trying to make sure that what we've invested is worth what we've done. So example I would give, at one of the multi-dwelling units, we put a public charging station, and the economics behind it said, we need to get 7 vehicles out of that. So far, we've had 3. And not a lot of interest, on top of that at this point. So we really want to be careful, because that installation cost, was around $12,000. So for 3 cars, we can use that money to do something else. So these pilot programs are for us to gather information and figure out if it makes sense. How many cars do we need to get adopted at a location to invest? And so when I say it's paused because we want to get the data to support what we want to do financially.
Okay, so if HOA is looking for advice, you're still available. Just the funding is the side that's paused.
Yeah, that's the big piece.
Because I want people to know that they can still come to the light plant and ask questions about how to get these things done, because it gets quite complex, and they need some kind of instructor to help share information. The second question I had is past due billing. Could you give us a little bit of an update on how that's going? I know that was going to be difficult.
Yeah, so this is part of the next topic a little bit, but we are starting the past due billing process. The friendly reminders went out or are going out. Some of them already went out in the first billing cycle. And that's the little notification that's on your bill that you have a past due balance. So that process is starting this month. And Carol, do you want to give some details on the whole process?
Yeah, at this point, with the April and May bills, we have the bill message that Dave referred to. We're also doing a letter insert that has a little more information about how we're approaching our redeployment of the collections process. The CSR staff is now back in the office full time, and little by little, we're starting to get everybody kind of back on board with policy and what our plans are going to be. But during the months of April and May, it's going to be a very soft push at this point, just getting notification out there to people and asking people to get in touch with us if they would like to establish a budget plan. And we're starting to hear back from a couple of customers. I've seen some emails come in this week requesting some help. And then beyond that, by the month of June is when we'll start actually making phone calls and doing a little more work on actually contacting customers. And then we don't really plan to do any disconnections of service until July. So it is still several months out, but we do have an action plan in place to take steps each month just to gradually ease back into this.
Great. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And Dave, just to clarify, the original multi-dwelling program that you rolled out, you only were going to look at 3 sites to begin with, right? And then that was just that was the standard expectation that you were going to do those 3 and assess them.
Yeah, on the EV pilot ready program, we had targeted 3. You know, more people could have expressed interest and look at them and then select the 3. So we did select 3. 2 of the 3 are moving forward, which is because we need the data. So we'll see how that shakes out. But it would have been nice if we got all 3 of them, but we only get 2.
Right. Well, that's part of the process, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, if there's no more questions, we can move on, Dave, to your next topic. So the restaffing plan, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so just to remind folks, you know, on March 8th, we brought our metering staff back to 5 days a week. That has gone very well. On April 5th, we brought the customer service team back, which Carol referenced a minute ago. So that that has gone well. And on May 3rd is when we're planning on bringing back the teams together. So we have, you know, teams A and B. We're going to merge the essential services employees in those groups back together. They'll be 5 days a week. So that's the next big step. We're also going to start installations of new broadband customers on May 3rd. You know, we have currently a backlog of about 220 or so requests for broadband. So we're really working through the process on how to get caught up now that we're going to start the installation process. The next plan is on June 7th to return all the non-essential services employee. So that's the plan. We're on track right now. I know I mentioned it a few meetings ago, but you know, we're going to continue through the process. We have a high number of employees that are in the vaccination process. Some are fully vaccinated. So everything seems to be lining up well with the timeline that we established. So far, so good. We will still have the ability to do remote work if needed, but we haven't established, you know, on a higher level what that means, like if we're going to allow it and how often. That'll be something that'll be discussed at the SMT level with the town manager, but we have the tools to do that, but we haven't finished the plan for that yet.
Okay. Great. I don't see any questions. So I guess we can just keep moving on. So do we want to move on to the town meeting warrant articles? Dave, I know that we'd exchanged some emails around what warrant articles were of interest to review today. And I know we have the standard CMLP and pilot article that we would expect to have. And then there were 2 others, Articles 31 and 41. Do you want to do a brief intro?
Sure.
On that? Great.
So Article 20 is the plant expenditures and payment in lieu of taxes. It's the standard article that we have up every year. It really should be on the consent calendar. I don't expect it not to be, but you never know. So it's something that the board every year, and I wouldn't expect any less this year. So that's a routine article. Article 31, it's the home rule legislation and bylaw amendment regulations for fossil fuel infrastructure. So that's something that the board may be of interest in taking a position on. And then Article 41 is a petition article. It's Fiber/Broadband Study Committee. And that's sponsored by Gail Heyer. And that's another article that the board may take a position on.
I know that the public hearing on these articles are all going to be under the select board, which is April 27th. So remind board members to call into that meeting. It'll be of interest. Do folks have particular feedback on these articles that they're already aware of?
I think the one thing that I need to add before you guys get into it is for Article 20, that'll be part of the enterprise budget presentations, and that will be on May 11th.
Okay.
That will be a virtual meeting, but that's the date for that.
Okay. I'm glad you corrected that, because I thought when I saw the warrant, it was listed on the select board, but I might have missed that. So thank you for clarification.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know, I know we sent the link out to the warrant article. I don't know if the board members have had a chance to review that, or if you're familiar with that. Do board members have any feedback on these at this point that they want to share with the board? Or do you want to wait till the presentation on the 27th and then review it next month?
So I think, you know, the discussion probably around let's assume that the board is supportive of Article 20.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, I think the discussion is around the other two articles.
Yeah.
31 and 41.
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately,
sorry, go ahead, Brian.
yeah, unfortunately, I haven't seen the warrant yet. I'm surprised I didn't get it in the mail yet. So I'll take a look. I think the next meeting I'll be ready to discuss, because I haven't reviewed these, but I do know at least something about Article 31, just because it was Article 40 and there's been a revision of that. But I'll be better prepared next week.
So
it is posted.
it-
And I think it's going in the mail this week, but it hasn't posted to the website.
Yeah,
And-
it's mailed today.
Yeah, I've got it open here from the website, so it is there.
yeah,
Yep.
and it was sent in the board packet on Friday. So
The link.
I have been involved in Article 31's development. And I think it would be valuable to have Alice here, because Alice has been a major player in all of this. So I think holding the discussion until she's there would be good.
I share that sentiment because I know she's been involved for sure. Yeah.
Is there anything in the recent climate legislation that was passed that would impact the 31?
I think there was actually language that would make it less important to do this, but I think the judgment was made, and correctly, I believe, that the implementation of the new legislation could be a long time coming, and other towns are moving ahead in creating home rule petitions to achieve these results, realizing that the actual implementation of any statute is going to take a while.
So I think the idea behind this topic on the agenda was to get you guys to start thinking about it. So there was no expectation for you guys to vote today, but to start the dialogue.
So let me just make this one comment about, I'm not familiar with the details of the broadband proposal, but my understanding is that it's an attempt to speed up and broaden the implementation, make it available to every last street and neighborhood and house in Concord. And I think that that's our plan in the long term. So it's really just a question about urgency, and it could make it more expensive, right? We'd have to buy more bucket trucks and hire more people. So that's the trade-off.
Yeah, I don't know, Dave, if maybe as part of our discussion next month, we can have sort of an update in terms of where we are now. I mean, this gets into, I think, some of the undergrounding, right?
Yeah, that's we got 95% of the roads covered. So there's 5% that don't have conduits. I think the important thing to keep in mind is, yeah, we have 95% of the roads covered. That doesn't mean we have 95% fiber to the home. Because that last pole to the house or handhold to the house, an expensive proposition.
Yep.
But the roads that we don't have conduits on, it's also expensive. And I think, something that, if this article passes, will be factored into the thinking of the committee as they go through it. They're gonna have to look at the whole thing. Stephen, I don't know if you have anything to add. I saw your hand raised.
Yeah, I did speak to the petitioner. And I think there is an urgency. I think that it's a sense of the petitioner that there's I don't know, I shouldn't say that we have a lack of urgency. I think, as the board knows, there's been, we've had some turnover. The search for a telecom director took quite a while. And then I think the pandemic really has affected broadband deployments and other things probably as much or more than any other division. And as I relate to the petitioner, give us a chance to plan for a plan to go forward. It's just something I just haven't had the time to do because of pandemic response. And so now that we're coming out of the pandemic, hopefully give us and we have our telecom director now who's been here about a year. Let's give us a chance to figure out where we're going and strategize and prioritize before we do a citizens committee that wants to be somewhat directive in that effort. And if a year from now we haven't done anything, then the citizens committee would be I'd have that coming because I didn't deliver on what we said we were going to do. And she decided to put the petition in anyway, which is fine. I mean, I think it's it's good to get input on subjects. I can just visualize that first meeting being like, well, we're trying. So, I do think, the state has had a last mile program for years for broadband, because during my time in Western Mass, I know that was a big issue out there. And I think it was MBI and I think it was really an up and down experience. The last mile stuff, that's a metaphor really, but it's time consuming and expensive. And if it was easy and cost effective, it would have been done with all the other miles. And I think that's the expectations management thing that I think is going to have to be, part of our community discussion.
Yes.
But the other thing I'll say is the American Recovery Plan Act, ARPA, has funds in it. We're still waiting on Treasury guidance on how they can be spent, but generally they're able to be used until I think the end of 2024. And they've said that broadband, is an eligible expense. We just don't know how we don't have the guidance, but as we prioritize the use of those funds, it's about $5 million for Concord. Certainly connectivity, especially in business districts, because the intent of it is economic recovery, will be something that'll be pretty high on our list that we look at. So there's two separate conversations. There's a petition, and then there's the American Recovery Plan Act, and what can we use? How can we leverage those funds?
That's great. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that update. I did see the $5 million. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of money. So it's great. So Laura, I see your hand raised. Yep.
I just wanted to add, because I've had some conversations with folks who have called, the light plant interested in this topic, and actually encouraged the petitioner to contact the town manager to talk about this. So my understanding, and it could be wrong, is that the petition is in particular around assistance in helping identify sources of revenue, because we have had some very high level discussions with some of these interested parties about the cost. And even though $5 million sounds like a lot of money, that would not cover the last mile by any stretch. So we're talking about a lot of money. And, you know, when these folks have come by and said, hey, we want to connect the last mile, we've said, hey, this is going to cost a lot of money. And the answer was, well, let us help you find the money. And I think the urgency in part was fueled by the view that dollars are going to become available through the pandemic funding. So as you said, Stephen, that you know, they wanted to get this conversation going because they're afraid that some monies that might be available would go down the road. And they've identified other sources besides the American Recovery Act that could potentially be tapped. So anyway, I'm giving just a little bit softer view that maybe they won't be quite as directive as we think might be the case, but that it might be more of a, you know, citizens helpful committee to look at sources of funding.
Let's be clear, we're not spending $5 million on broadband out of ARPA. We have a lot of needs that need to be addressed.
Yeah,
so I mean, and because you're right, to your point, Laura, it's not really all that much in the grand scheme of things. And it's not really 100% dedicated to broadband. I mean, I think I wouldn't be surprised if the discussion turns to Wi-Fi as a part of that committee process. And I'd be interested to see, you know, where that conversation goes as well. But you know, I think, like I said, if people have, you know, other revenue ideas, I mean, as we sit here today, you know, and again, this is not to be, you know, the bad guy, it's expectation management. Right now, the costs of the expensive extension of the service gets borne by all of the ratepayers. You know, and so that's why, like I said, if it was cost effective, it would have been done already. And so this is why we want to, you know, have the opportunity to really dedicate some time with Greg and Dave and our new CIO, Jason Bolger, to say, okay, where are we going in the next 3 to 5 years, and how do we get there, and what's the funding available? And that conversation really is overdue, and there's reasons for that, but that is the next really important conversation we need to have.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Laura. Dave, I still want to go back to the thought that next month, you know, while Pam is new and Brian probably knows some of this, we should talk about what that cost is so that the board is more fluent in sort of those expectations. So just so that we have better background on that topic for the meeting.
Yeah, we can certainly go through that. I mean, we looked at it when we were doing the planning for the smart grid fiber, and at that time, and this is back in 2007 and 2009, we did 2 different looks at it. And at that time, it was over $10 million.
Yeah.
So that's out information, but it's still kind of gives you the idea of what we're talking about in terms of dollars.
Yeah. And I know it's not completely accurate. I just want people to have the context and the perspective. So.
Yeah.
Great.
We do have 2 folks with their hands raised.
Great. I don't know who they are, but.
So Carlin Reed was the first one.
Okay. Carlin.
Hi, Carlin Reed, 83 Wits End. I appreciate the discussion on Article 41. As you may have guessed, I'm quite in favor of it. The question I have is for David. David, during your report, you said that there were 220 backlogged requests for broadband. How many of those requests were from residents in the multi-dwelling units that currently don't have broadband, such as Concord Green, Wright Farm, and the Muse?
I don't know the answer to that. We have had some requests from folks in Concord Green. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. I can go through that list and send you a more detailed and more accurate answer, but it's a small number, but there are some customers that have requested it.
Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Carla. Dave, who was next?
Pamela Dritt.
Okay, Pamela, you're on mute, I think. There you go.
Thank you. Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green, Unit 4. I would like that I haven't requested it, but I still would like it. Although I think the odds of getting it are 0. Can you please consider that the expenses of this will be mitigated by the fact that the meter system that you put in, there's a great deal of problem with fears of RFD radiation, and a townwide Wi-Fi would only exacerbate that rather than help it, whereas fiber connection would mitigate it. And we need to be able to make a smart grid, right? So spending money on the fiber connection would help the smart grid work, wouldn't it?
Yeah, thank you. I think I saw Gail Heyer.
Yep.
Raise your hand, Dave.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, so, obviously we'd all love to wave our hands and magically get fiber to everyone's homes, but that's not what I was thinking. I really wanted this group, this fiber broadband completion committee, to look at creative solutions and, how this project can be accomplished. I just, as an example, analogy, I've been part of a Friends of Trees group in the town of Concord that sort of worked behind the scenes, and we've actually managed to accomplish the town publishing a brochure that is going to help anyone who's interested in trees, builders, homeowners, get more trees in the town, and that's a climate help because trees sequester carbon. And but the reason I'm bringing that up is just that it was a citizens group. We just kind of got together and said, hey, how can we get more trees in town? So this is kind of what I'm thinking, like, how can we get more fiber in town? And it's not just how can we raise the money? It's like, what are the obstacles? And anyway, I'm hoping that the group would be very creative.
Great. Thank you, Gail. Dave, I thought I saw Dave Allen.
Yep.
There you are. Okay. Hey, Dave.
Good morning. Good morning. On this question of townwide Wi-Fi and fears about radiation, any such thinking has to be taken in context. We all carry, maybe a few folks in town don't carry smartphones, but we practically all carry smartphones. And you know what? They're only connected because there is radiation from cell towers. We could always make a comparison between Wi-Fi towers and cell towers, but fundamentally that's not an issue so long as we're going to have cell towers. Happily, I don't think that one has any place to go forward. And Wi-Fi across town is something that was considered, again, being the guilty party going back a couple of decades now. In fact, part of the installation originally was Wi-Fi all across town. Dave could tell you that story. Enough.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. And Brian, I saw your hand raised.
So a quick question about governance structure. So is this proposed, I haven't, full disclosure, I haven't read the article yet, but is it considered that this new group or committee would be a subcommittee to the light board that holds the responsibility of overseeing the broadband? What's the role of this board and this proposed committee? Or is that too early to ask? Is that?
Well, if you read the petition, it is a town manager appointed committee advisory to the town manager for broadband. So it's not a subcommittee of the light board, at least not to my reading of it.
Right. And then Steve, was there a light board member requested to participate, I believe?
That could be.
Yep. But you answered the basic question. Thanks.
Well, I mean, I think even if it's not requested, I think it would be a good idea to have somebody from the light board on the committee if the article is approved. And like I said, I don't know where it'll go. I think, Gail mentioned the tree brochure, which is, if you haven't seen it, it's a fantastic document. And I think that's one of the things where a citizens committee worked with the support of CPW staff and our sustainability coordinator. I think the whole thing was funded by an MVP grant that the town received. And so it's those kinds of partnerships I think can be very creative and productive. I think, the monolithic, costs that we already kind of know that are associated with this seem, it's the proverbial how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time thing, I think, as we sit here now in broadband. And so this is something we're just gonna have to see if there's a different way to go about it.
Great. Thank you for that feedback. Dave, were you speaking? You're on mute, Dave.
Yeah, we have one more hand up.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the structure, and it's an independent committee, rolling up to Stephen Crane. I thought about, does it make sense to have this be a subcommittee of the light plan? And I don't know if that would be up to town meeting, but I just really thought, after talking with a lot of people around town about this is a bigger issue than just the light plan. Like, this is really something that could really benefit the entire town. And so I realized that the town manager appoints the light board. So it just made sense to have it be a town-wide thing, not just light plan. And there is at least one member of the committee that is to be appointed by you guys. So that's how I set it up.
Thanks, Gail. Appreciate that additional feedback. All right, Dave, any more questions? Any raised hands that I might have missed?
No, I think we got them all.
All right. Okay. So does the board, I think what we're observing here is that we want to defer actually any further discussion until Alice is back on Article 31. And so we'll have a broader discussion again next month on both of these. And again, reminder that people should attend the public hearings to get that perspective on what's presented. And we'll have more discussion next month.
The public hearing, I'm sorry, Wendy.
Yep. So for Articles 31 and 41 that are select board sponsored, that one is on April 27th. And then the enterprise budget is May 11th, which would be the Article 21.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, all right, we'll move on in the agenda. We're doing okay on time. The next agenda item is the commercial net metering rate. The information on those recommended changes was forwarded by Karen earlier, so I hope folks had a chance to read them. And I believe these changes are consistent with our larger rate study recommendations. So I don't know, Dave, you or Laura, I don't know if you want to speak to these. Who might want to?
Do you want? We can share the screen so you guys have the stuff in front of you.
Yeah, that would be great.
Let me do that. Laura, what would you like up first?
Can you bring up the residential net metering rate? So I apologize for bringing another rate sheet to you guys. I thought this was all done and behind us because we don't really have any new fundamental needs for a rate change. But unfortunately, I missed some wording changes that should have happened back on January 1st. And they're not material. I'll explain why. But what you're looking at now is the residential net metering rate. And the big change that I failed to include in the wording that was effective January 1st and came as a result, as you said, Wendy, of the cost of service study, is that we decided based on a consultant's recommendation to change the set of prices that we use to compensate net metered customers for excess generation. We had been using the day ahead price. And I will explain, Pamela, in just a second what that is. But the consultant decided that it would be more appropriate to use the real-time price. So the way power is scheduled and traded in the United States and has been for decades is that on the day before the planning day, so let's say you're planning for your supply for tomorrow, Thursday. On Wednesday, everybody around the country gets together, figures out how much they think they're going to need, and make trades based on, trying to get to zero. If you have more, you try to sell it. If you don't have enough, you try to buy it. Then when the day actually gets there, okay, and they make those estimates based on forecasts of weather and whatnot. When the day actually gets there, of course, what you actually need is going to be different than what you thought you were going to need the day before. And so another set of trading occurs that's called real-time trading, which is basically on the hour before, or nowadays it's in 5 minutes before, you figure out again, okay, oh no, I thought I was going to need 20 megawatts this hour yesterday, but now I find out I need 21. And so you go out and you procure that extra 1 megawatt on that same day, like an hour before the power is to be delivered. It's basically like a true up methodology, because the weather's going to be, of course, slightly different than what you thought it was going to be yesterday. And, you know, other things can happen. The sun is shining or isn't shining. So the prices get traded twice. And the ISO New England publishes both what the averages were for the day ahead trading and what the averages are for the day of trading, or the real-time trading. So we're just switching one set of prices for another. It's not inherently good or bad for the net metered customers, because nobody knows whether the day ahead or the real time is going to be the higher price. And it splits. So you may have 1 month when the day ahead prices were higher than the real time, and then the next month that the real time were higher than the day ahead. So this is not prejudicial to the net meter customers in any way. It's just a new methodology for determining the cost that the consultant felt was more appropriate. So that was the major change we wanted to make to this rate schedule. But because we were going ahead and making a change, we decided to do some cleanup. And the cleanup items on the residential were that, do you see where this word generated is being continuously replaced in favor of delivered? The way the tariff was written has led to some confusion among customers who don't understand that CMLP actually doesn't pay them for the amount of energy that their solar panels produce. We don't know how much their solar panels produce, okay? The only thing CMLP measures is the amount of kilowatt hours the customer sends to CMLP at any given moment, because they're not using as much at their house that their solar panels are producing. So let's say a solar panel produces 5 kilowatts and the household uses 3. What CMLP sees is the 2 kilowatts that the house didn't use, but that were produced by the panels. And so in this rate tariff, we're calling that 2 kilowatts the energy generated. But in fact, the energy generated by the home was 5 kilowatts. And so I really just wanted to clarify this, that what we're talking about is the amount of energy that gets delivered by the customer to CMLP. So again, this is not a change to the way we do it, to the way we calculate the net metering. It's just to clean up the language so that it's not as confusing to the residential customers. And I did get one suggestion to clean up this table below here to be a little bit more presentable and a little bit shorter. So I might make some formatting changes to that. But other than that, that is the only change we're talking about to this rate schedule, is the changing of the words day ahead to real time and the cleanup of the reference language to from generated to delivered.
So Laura, I had this question. This is actually for the whole board. So typically, any rate change or rate sheet changes are reviewed through a public hearing that we have a discussion and then we vote separately. But we didn't publish this as a rate hearing today. So I want to just get another read on whether, if we could vote on this today, does that make sense? Or is that allowable, given that we're not technically changing the rate, but the real-time change does have an impact?
So you actually already voted on this back when we had the results of the cost of service study, and the consultant recommended the change to real time. The problem was I failed to update the rate sheet.
Okay.
On the website.
Right.
Okay. We made the methodology change, everything happened, but I forgot to change the wording in the rate tariff.
Okay. So conceptually, we voted on the methodology already. It's just a documentation administrative at this point. Okay. Gordon, give a hand raise.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that anybody that's been watching these proceedings closely would already be aware that this change was intended, even if it wasn't implemented. And just one minor comment, I really like changing the word delivered and received, because that matches what the meter says.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I like that too. Brian, comment?
I agree. The changes here proposed are minor. I would like for us to have a discussion about the residential collection of distribution on this rate, because it is, with our fixed fee getting higher and higher every year, this is getting out of balance. Quite a lot of distribution fees are being collected from those residential solar customers. So I'd like to propose that we make this a rate hearing at the next meeting and discuss making the residential rate more like the commercial rate in how it collects for distribution, where it collects for distribution based on the kilowatt hours consumed by that customer in total. So if you've net metered a kilowatt, you pay the distribution on that. It's a better system that we corrected with the commercial rate.
So
I'd love to talk about time of use rates to replace all this, but we haven't gotten there yet.
yeah, we're not there yet, Brian. I mean, I know what you want to talk about, and that's fine. I think with this particular rate, we're just trying to put together what was voted on already. And what you're talking about is a larger discussion. And we will have that certainly. But I think, you know, for this residential one, we're looking to get it in line with what was voted on.
Right. Thanks, David. I'm not sure, Brian, that we're ready to actually propose some kind of rate change, but Dave, maybe for the future, we can have just a discussion around this topic. Really, I don't think we're ready to make any kind of rate change, but let's educate the board, Brian, on what your concern is. I know we've talked about it before, but let's have a focused discussion on that, independent of this rate change. So thank you.
I agree with a full discussion at a later meeting when we're prepared, but I'd like to see that discussion happen. I have talked about this when we talked about the rates back in November and December, and it's still getting punted. So.
Okay, understood. Brian, I'm sorry, Gordon.
I don't want to continue the discussion of that in specifics, but I agree with Brian's larger point.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that, I think, and
Wendy, we just need to do one more rate sheet.
Okay. Yep.
That was the residential and the commercial. Since we've already talked about it, we'll be very quick.
Okay.
Dave, could you bring up the commercial rate schedule?
Yep.
The red line version. Okay, so this one, in addition to the changes that we talked about in terms of delivered and received, if you scroll down a little bit, Dave.
You good? You want more?
Yeah, keep going a little bit. So we've got the delivered and received stuff there, and then the change from day ahead to real time. The only other change on this commercial, and now if you can scroll back to the top, Dave, is I'm proposing to strike this wording that says that to apply for this rate schedule, the generation has to have a net output greater than 10 kW. This is a holdover. This has always been part of the rate schedule as far as I know it, but we did get a request from a commercial customer for a system that was less than 10 kW. And staff asked me, well, can they still apply for this? And I looked at the rate language and I thought, well, okay, why do we have this requirement in here? Why did we say it doesn't need to be greater than 10? And Dave and I did discuss it, and I'm not aware of any, operational or policy reason why it would need to be greater than 10 to enjoy the benefits of this rate schedule. So I'm just proposing to take that out as a requirement, so that basically any size system up to 167 kW could apply for commercial net metering under this rate schedule.
Yeah, and if you think about it, a small commercial customer, their roof may not be big enough for 10 kW. They may only get 5 kW. And I don't think we should limit them from the program. And that's really why we're striking that. The other piece that we need to consider is, what if a commercial customer wants to array larger than 167 kW? You know, currently under this rate, they can't. But you know, we should consider that as well.
I would agree with Dave on striking the upper cap as well.
But I don't want to strike it. I think we have to have some, you know, anything over 167, we have to have some, you know, some guidelines there, because, you know, if we had someone come in and say they want a megawatt in, you know, we would require, you know, storage with that, because the system's saturated right now with solar. But I also think we want to have that ability to allow them to do that. So I think we need to have some framework around it. That's all.
Do you have any suggested language?
Yeah, we can put some stuff together. We haven't done that yet.
And specifically, Dave, that's to modify this further to put a cap.
Yeah, I think we want to have the flexibility above 167 to allow it, and to allow it to go on this rate, given some parameters.
So does that discussion keep us from making a decision on this rate sheet today? Would you prefer to defer it?
On this particular one, you know, everything that's in here is pretty straightforward right now. But that piece that I just talked about is something that's going to take a little more time and a little more board effort to figure out what, if anything, we want to allow above 167. So while everything that's in here is, you know, pretty straightforward, I think you could vote on this and should have a higher discussion on what to do above 167, because we do have one potential customer that's come to us, you know, that would like to put a larger array. They're interested in the net metering. And I think that's going to be a larger discussion with the board. Okay. If that were to go forward. Right now, they wouldn't qualify for this rate. And I think, you know, we have been promoting solar for a number of years, and, you know, we don't want to discourage someone, but we also want to make sure that we're taking system reliability into consideration when we get those big arrays on, that the system can't absorb the energy.
Yeah, and that higher level discussion, I think we'll also have to focus on the economics of this. You know, we've had this residential net metering for a number of years now, and in my opinion, it does result in cost shifting. Those folks who do not have solar end up paying more for electricity than they otherwise would have if the solar folks had not put up the solar. So we have a bigger discussion to talk about whether solar net metering, the way we're currently applying it, is actually viable financially into the future. And particularly if we were to consider systems larger than 167, it would bring the issue to bear even faster. You know, it'll force us to really understand what the financial implications are. So I think that needs to be part of the bigger discussion as well.
Yeah. It's a much larger discussion. Yeah. Okay. All right, Brian.
So Laura, I'd like you to prove that argument to me that it shifts cost to increase for non-solar customers. Because we've had discussions in the past, and that has been shown to be incorrect because of the avoided cost of what solar provides into our system during peak events. So that's the whole net metering discussion that we had back in 2012, you know, that lasted for a long time. It's a big topic. But one of the other things that needs to be talked about with these two rates is that we're treating commercial customers and residential customers differently. And that has been brought up in both this cost of service study and the previous one. I think these both need to become similar. There can't be a fixed distribution collection in the residential one and then a per kilowatt in the commercial one. And there has to be, they have to treat different rate classes similarly. So I think I don't disagree with the proposed changes, but I think that we do need to do a lot more discussion around these two rates.
Okay. Gordon?
Yeah, I think that this set of changes is nearly identical to the changes that we just talked about for residential, with the difference being opening up the tariff, the schedule to smaller systems. So the question in my mind is whether or not this proposed change requires a hearing. We decided it didn't for residential. I think that it doesn't. Certainly the language changes, delivered versus generated, are completely benign. And the only thing that would maybe be different in this case, like I said, the getting rid of that 10 kilowatts. I would argue that opening up this to a larger set of commercial ratepayers does not require a hearing because it's not discriminatory. It doesn't, a rate hearing is an opportunity for someone who would be affected to show up and say, hey, you're killing me here. But there's nothing that's going to make anything more difficult for any ratepayer in this class by opening up and making this available to smaller systems. So I think that we don't need a hearing.
Thank you, Gordon, for moving us along to that topic. I appreciate it. And I would agree. Do other members of the board have any difference of opinion?
I think Gordon's absolutely right on that. So, I don't think there's a hearing needed for the proposed changes. The bigger discussion that we'll have, that would require a hearing if we were to make changes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We all agree, and we need more discussion on them before then. So.
Yep.
Okay, so we don't have any hands raised, Dave, that I can't see.
Nope.
Okay, so I would, if we are comfortable with these changes, I would entertain a motion to support these changes.
So sure, Wendy, I'll move that the board approve the changes to the general service rate metering rate and the residential rate net metering rate as redlined.
Okay, as distributed.
As distributed. Thank you.
Any comments or a second? Waiting for a second.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Pam. Appreciate it. All right, I'll take a roll call. Pam?
Yes.
Brian?
No, because I think we need a broader discussion.
Okay. Gordon?
Approved.
Wendy approved. So on the vote of 3-1, we'll approve these changes as recommended. And we'll definitely have further discussion on these rates. So
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, so it is 8:30. Just moving on in our agenda. So our next update is the climate change roadmap. There were some materials distributed to the board in advance of this. Dave, I don't know do you want to give an update on these legislative changes?
Yeah, Kate Hanley's on here now, so the two of us will go through it. We presented this to the select board recently, and we'd like to do the same thing. So if you want to kick it off like we did the last one, that'd be great, and I'll jump in at the end.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Kate Hanley, Sustainability Director. I'm happy to tell you a little bit about the climate bill that was recently passed and signed into law. For kind of the short version of the history of this bill coming to fruition, the legislature first passed a version of the climate bill in December, sent it to the governor's desk for a signature. He vetoed that bill in January, and because that was the end of the legislative session, there was no opportunity for amendments or back and forth. So the next legislative session began, and they sent back the same exact bill to the governor, and that initiated a process of governor suggesting some amendments. The legislature accepted some, rejected some, and eventually on March 26th, the bill was signed into law. So, you know, Dave sent around an MAPC summary of the bill, which I think is one of the best ones I've read. There's a lot to it. It's very extensive and an expansive legislation. But you can see that it covers things like new greenhouse gas reduction targets for the state, covers a lot of policy around buildings, environmental justice, renewable energy, job creation, gas safety, and more. The key components that I shared with the select board that I think are particularly relevant for Concord, you know, a few around setting for new construction, which is a challenge for municipalities in Massachusetts. So the bill requires that DOER will establish a new opt-in net zero stretch code for municipalities. So it's particularly exciting for us since we've been trying to move forward with new construction being net zero and more sustainable. It also adds energy experts to the BBRS, the Board of Building Regulations and Standards, who set the building code for the state. A few items in there around energy efficiency. It requires that Mass Save now consider the cost of climate change in their planning. So I'm hopeful that that will mean that some of the Mass Save audits will be reframed around greenhouse gas reductions rather than just strict energy consumption savings. It has some new appliance efficiency standards. It also sets some new EV adoption benchmarks and requires that the state create incentives to meet those if they're not on track to meet those. And there are a few other things around additional funding to Mass EC for green jobs to help accelerate all of this transition to a clean energy economy, and establishes a pilot program for geothermal heat pump micro districts, which I think is really cool and something that we can probably learn from down the line. It also sets some new requirements for MLPs. I'll let Dave give you the details there. But I just wanted to know, you know, Gordon's question about, does this change our strategy for testing? This came up in the select board meeting as well. And the short answer is no, because we don't know what the zero stretch code is going to look like. We don't know that it's necessarily going to call for all electric new construction. We don't know exactly when it's going to be approved and when it's going to be available. Assumption it will take a couple of years. We do know today that all electric is practical and will help us meet our climate goals. So there is consensus among many of the communities that have been part of this RMI Building Electrification Accelerator to move forward with this home rule petition and bylaw for all electric new construction anyway. And at the very least, it sends a signal to the state that there's consensus among communities that all electric is important and should be considered as part of the net zero stretch code. So I will stop there and let Dave tell you about the MLP piece of the bill.
Yeah, so in the bill, it requires municipal light plants to purchase 50% of our power from non-carbon sources by 2030 and to get to net zero emissions by 2050. So, you know, this is the first time municipal light plants have had, a requirement like this. And, you know, it doesn't have a major impact on what we're doing because we're already working well ahead of the schedule. But I think it certainly helps get all the MLPs a target. So that's a really good thing in my mind. And like I said, we're already ahead of schedule, and we will continue to be ahead of schedule based on the numbers and the data that we've been looking at. So, it's a good thing for the MLP communities, and it's a good thing for the MLPs that haven't been doing a heck of a lot. So, so I'm encouraged by it.
Yeah, no, I think it's great legislation. Dave, it also strikes me that this legislation is going to put a lot of pressure on the marketplace for green energy, and costs are probably going to go up because the demand is going to be so high. That's going to be.
Yeah, we're certainly going to have to keep our eye on that because, with our goals of, not just buying RECs, but buying into contracts that are renewable sources with RECs,
Yep.
this could go up. And as a result, that could have an impact on the overall rate that we charge customers. So we really have to keep a close eye on it. And if it does happen, then I think, we have to communicate accordingly with our ratepayers.
Yep. Not unexpected necessarily, but maybe faster than expected. Brian?
Yeah, to Dave's point, it puts, with all of the MLPs needing more renewable energy, it puts pressure on E&E to find more of those projects to bring to us, which has been one of the issues that we've had is not having enough opportunities that are a good price. I mean, that's important. And I know E&E is trying, but I'd like to see more of those come in front of us so that we can do more bundled renewable energy from wind, solar, hydro that bundles with the Class 1 RECs.
Yeah, and just to be clear, that's what E&E is doing. They're out there
it just
actively
ramps up the pressure for that.
Yeah, so they're actively looking for green contracts for their customers, and that's a good thing. But there's only so many out there, and that's the larger issue.
Yeah.
Gordon, your hand raised.
I have a question. I guess it would be for Dave or maybe Laura. One of the items here is 2,400 megawatts of offshore wind. Do you think that that'll be enough? In other words, we're always looking for new sources. E&E is helping us with that. Will E&E be able to get a piece of that 2,400, do you think?
Yeah, they'll be looking into that for sure. They've already discussed it. So anytime there's a project, they're reaching out and getting the terms and does it make sense financially? They understand that we have paid a little bit more than market occasionally for green, and so they know where we stand on all of that. But yeah, they'll be actively looking into that.
Great. Gordon?
Just one other point is that in this summarizes the impact on municipal requires before this, municipal light plants didn't have renewable energy requirements. That kind of irritated me a little bit because what they're saying here is that requirements come solely from the state or maybe from the federal government, and it doesn't recognize the efforts that are made locally. Those count too.
Yep. Really legislative, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Kate, anything else that you want to add in terms of town strategy as it relates to this, or any other feedback?
Nothing at the moment, but thanks, Dave, for asking me to give the update. I think it's great that you all are paying attention to this. It's a pretty big deal for Massachusetts, so exciting for all of us that have been working towards a lot of these climate solutions already.
Yep, no, that's great. And it's going to take a while for this legislation to sort of work through and get those regulations promulgated.
Yeah, we'll be watching closely, as I'm sure you imagine, how the implementation goes and funding opportunities for Concord and places where it will directly impact us and where we can take the lead on some of these things.
Great. All right, Dave, any hands raised by anybody on this topic?
Yes, David Allen.
Hey, David. There you go, thanks.
Ed, I missed it before. David Allen, 316 Heathbridge Road. An ideal opportunity to check what's not a small point with the knowledgeable assembled here. The benchmarks, the required levels, 2030, 2050. If I may frame the question this way, do those require real renewable sources or RECs plus real? Do we know?
it's referred to carbon, so Rex would count.
Okay. Clearly, we're all well aware of the importance of eventually getting beyond the RECs, but at least now those of us here are informed that those targets include RECs. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, David. It's a good question. All right. Any other? Oh, Brian?
Yeah, just a quick clarification. If I remember correctly, the bill says that MLP's zero carbon target, zero carbon in that bill is defined as half the emissions of a dual cycle natural gas plant. Is that correct?
Yep.
So it's not truly zero, but it is a great step in the right direction. So, and I'm glad it passed, but it would be great if it was more rigorous, but it passed.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? I'm not seeing any. Okay. All right. Well, moving along. I don't know if we have any liaison or public comments. I have no liaison reports myself. Any more questions from the public, Dave? Let's see. Oh,
Yep.
Yep. Hi, Terry. You're on mute, I think.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, Terry Ackerman, 89 Heathbridge Road, on the select board, but speaking as an individual. Thank you for everything you guys do on this board, very hardworking board. Thank you, Brian, for bringing up that we need a large discussion on the solar net metering charge, and I'm looking forward to that. I just think that possibly my house is similar to other houses. Just to give you an idea, we have 7 kilowatts, and the fee that we pay per month pretty much eats up all of the annual savings that we're getting from the solar of selling it back with net metering. So I don't think that's the intention. I think when people put in solar, they do expect some savings over the year and not to have it get eaten up by the fees. So when you get to that point and you get to that larger discussion, hopefully that'll be part of it. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Ray Andrews.
Okay, Ray?
Yes, following up on Pam's earlier comment, what is ENE?
Energy New England.
Okay, so maybe I needed more. So I go look that up on Google, Energy New England?
Yep,
Okay.
Energy New England.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just,
Yep.
At one of the first meetings, I raised my my interest in understanding our relationship with Energy New England better. And I think a comment was made that we would have a discussion about that. And I just wanted to remind us that it's an important relationship, and I would really like to understand it. I'd like to understand Dave's role and how it helps us and get a better context. And as I said, I think we agreed to do that way back.
Thanks, Pam. We'll put that on the agenda for next month if time permits, obviously. And then Dave, is there any written information around E&E that we can share in the interim?
Yeah, I mean,
outside of Googling it?
yeah, I can send out some information.
Okay.
And I could say also that E&E actually came and presented to the light board. It was when I was chair. That was a good discussion. So, and that's in the written record.
And you know, they're willing to come and do an interview if this board thinks it would be helpful. We do have some newer members. So if that's something that's of interest, I can arrange that.
Dave, you know,
from my point of view, I just want to say that I don't want to consume time educating just me, because if you have other ways of educating me that's more efficient, I'm happy to read something or whatever.
Pam, you know, Dave, E&E did come and gave a very good conversation around the challenges on the purchase power challenges and the moving parts. I think we should revisit that presentation, and I think it'd be beneficial for the whole board, just the challenges on purchase power. So coupling that with just E&E's role would be great.
We have one more hand raised.
Would that be Pamela? Trish?
Hi, Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green. We want to encourage the adoption of solar because every residential solar is investment in the infrastructure of clean energy that the light plant doesn't have to pay for. So if we have a system in which the individuals who put solar on their roofs get penalized for it instead of encouraged by it, then that's against our best interests as a town. I was really disturbed by Terry's comment. And I think we need to do everything we can to incentivize the adoption of residential solar as much as we do the adoption of EVs, electric vehicles, because eventually we want to produce all of our energy locally so we don't have to buy any, right?
Okay. Thank you, Pamela. Laura, do you want to comment? I see your hand up.
Yes, please. So I'm not saying I disagree with Ms. Dritt, but I would like to point out, particularly in light of the discussion we just had about the new state climate action goals, none of the power that is produced on residential solar panels counts as non-carbon emitting power. So, for example, if we were to invest a ton of money into trying to get as much residential solar as possible, which I'm not saying we're not doing, I'm just saying that if we invest that money there, we still need money to buy non-carbon emitting power because that stuff does not count.
Their goal.
Yeah, to that goal, that particular goal. Now, when there are no more renewable energy certificates associated with it in 10 years or whatever, then it would count. But we do have to think about the 10-year planning horizon between now and then of how can we incentivize both residential solar and still pay for RECs to clean it up.
That's right. Okay. Gordon?
That's an excellent point, Laura. I just point out that I got my panels shortly before, just a year before the Solarize Concord push, and they're like 9 years old now. So this particular thing is a kind of a hump that we're about to pass, and I'll stop getting what is it? S1 Rex, or sorry, smart. Anyway, I'm sorry, the acronym escapes me, but the 10-year period will be passed soon for me, like within a year or so, and then a year after that, that big group of panels will also pass into a new phase.
And just quickly on that same point, I'm overdue to be out of the SREC program, and as soon as I stop getting SRECs, I'd like to have a mechanism to automatically donate my class 1 to the light plant, because they're such a small value. It's better to just sign them over to the light plant and have you be able to count those as renewable energy certificates. And having that established as some kind of process for residents to do when they reach that 10th or 11th year for their array is I think a good idea. But further discussion sometime in the future when we come up with it.
I think that's a great topic, Ryan. I didn't realize that we could do that. So I think that would be beneficial for future discussion. I'm sure there's a lot of customers starting to hit or anticipating that. So
I was like solar install number 5, so it's still early days.
Yeah. Well, it takes a little while to put these things in place too. So
yeah.
Great. All right. Dave, anybody else with their hand raised that I can't see?
Nope.
Okay, all right, so I think we have come to the end of our agenda. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Thanks, Pam. All right, roll call. Pam,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Gordon,
Yes.
and Wendy says yes. So, all right, good discussion. Thank you all. Appreciate it. And we're ending a little early. So you're gonna
Nobody tell Alice she finished on time.
I know.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, Wendy.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye now.